Well, you can't try to stand as tall as a saint.
Hi there, it's Barbara Groark of Wcfa 101.5 FM, CapeMayRadio.org, and we're putting the WCFA spotlight here this morning on David Check, our local Cape May County poet. He's been writing poetry since the 1980s. He's been published in national and international poetry journals, and he has a couple of chapbooks, which are small books of poems out over the years, and he's been compiling since the pandemic and his reclusive time. He's got some new poems that he's going to share with us this morning. David. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
David, what got you started writing poetry back in the 80s?
Well, actually, I started writing poetry when I was 8 years old. One night, I just remember jumping out of bed with the poem in my head called Little Doggy Black Paws, and I had to write it down. I could still recite it. I won't do that now. And ever since then, I've been writing poetry, song lyrics. Because back then, I didn't play any instruments, so song lyrics were just for kind of experimental fun.
Mm-hmm.
And but I write because I had to write. I always had to write, and
something you enjoyed doing?
I branched off into other things. I wrote some essays and fiction. I was writing a lot of plays for a while, and then I got into songwriting.
Yeah, you're around town now.
Yeah,
sometimes I see you.
And there's you might see my name as David Hovanchek because Hovan is my mom's maiden name, and I've used that as a pseudonym more often than not. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also wrote a lot of journalism for a while. I was writing for all the papers in the area, the Herald, Shout, the Entertainment Weekly at Atlantic City Press. I had a column there for a while, and I did that in the 80s and 90s, and then I got away from it.
And did you make a living from this?
No, it's one of the reasons I got away from it. Okay. The payment wasn't really good.
And what did you end up doing when you were not being a poet?
No, if you're not a staff writer, they pretty much wanted to play stringers rates, and then if you complained about it, they'd say, "Well, we'll get a kid out of college who needs the clips." So,
well,
that's what that was all about. The other publication was the Sandpaper. I forgot to mention that.
Okay. So you said you wanted to read something from your pandemic moment?
Yeah, during the first shutdown, I live right now in a little one-room efficiency in a strip motel in North Wildwood. And at that time, I had no cable, no Wi-Fi, and the only contact with the world was an AM/FM radio. In order to go online on my phone, I had to go to my sister's driveway or McDonald's or Starbucks, a parking lot to get online. And my friend Rita started doing this hug-a-day to, pick everybody up during the pandemic. And I got this idea to start writing a poem a day. And because I was doing a lot of reading then too. And so I started writing a poem a day. And, they said it was going to last 2 months. And then, so eventually,
2 years.
Eventually I had like 136 days of poems. And some of those days were multiple poems. And I never typed them up. They're all longhand because my computer's down and all I have is my phone. But I did send out...
Well, the old-fashioned way. It still works.
One special poem. There was a call for submissions online from this journal, New Jersey Bard's Poetry Review. I submitted and was accepted. And I was glad to get it into print. And it was just a moment where everything seemed right there. It just, anyway, it's called Sheltering in Place, day 36. I can hear the droplets of rain through the silence of my interior exile, gently tapping on the roof and windows, dripping from the gutters in rhythmic rows, giving the night a sound that will never sound the same again, transformed into a sacrament by this journey of isolation.
And that's a Poetry Review 2022.
Yeah, it just came out.
Bards.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice to have something. And of course, I've been contributing Christmas poem to the Herald ever since 1986. One or two a year, and I compiled them in that chapbook. First one was A Toll Taker's Christmas. It's the
A toll taker's Christmas.
right.
We know toll takers around here.
Well, we used to live in the Crest and come over to the Presbyterian Church for the midnight candlelight service on Christmas Eve, and we would go through the toll booth. And after a year or two, we realized not only was the toll taker not only was working on Christmas Eve, but he was working there alone. So the next time we put together some cake and cookies, and we stopped and we sang Christmas carols. And he was so touched he wouldn't take the toll. And when I was looking for a poem the first time, I got A Toll Taker's Christmas, and I guess I should read it now since I talked so much about it.
Yeah, sure.
A Toll Taker's Christmas, presented. Approaching midnight on this eve of peace, the marshes lulled into a crib of gentle ice from the first hard frosts. An arc of roadway climbs into an easy sky to lift a drawbridge toward the perch of a toll taker's lonely watch. The waterway below flows with an idle prayer as eyes search for a car or boat this night that might distract the thought from Yule logs and punch bowls and family get-togethers. And only the mixed blessing of overtime can allow a shrug at a misspent Christmas to appease a sighing soul. Then suddenly, down the long stretch of road, a glimmer of headlights draws attention back to the job at hand. But a few coins passed from the other side of Christmas will only bring a glimpse of this season's celebration closer to a quiet heart. Halfway up the bridge, the car turns to a charging sleigh full of treats, with reindeer hooves on snow where tire meets pavement, and merry Mr. Claus in the seat where the driver should be. Ah, the lure of imagination when solitude demands a dream. But as the vehicle nears and the window of the toll booth slides open to collect the fee, the bleak burst of reality turns it back into a carload of churchgoers making their way to a midnight service. And a heart sinks back into renewed visions of home. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas. Then the season's mystery stirs. A smiling throng hands a bag full of homemade cookies into the palm of the toll taker's night and breaks into the sympathy and sincerity of song. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring. And the toll taker's face breaks into a smile of hallowed surprise as his eyes fight back a grateful trickle of tears. No, not forgotten this night. They bring you tidings of joy and peace and compassion. They wouldn't pass by and neglect the worker's most indecent plight of pulling the shift alone on Christmas Eve. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you all, he beams, and a hand reaches out to offer the coins of toll. But his voice wavers softly in gracious refusal. No, I couldn't. I just couldn't. Not after that, not tonight. Thanks again. And a mutual Merry Christmas resounds as a note of triumph to the moment's heart. Then the car drifts slowly off again under a chorus of silent night. A night not so silent now. A night that witnessed a gentle exchange, unpraised and unrecorded, except for the mirth of a few simple souls, here in another unseen reach of America, where the truest gift of Christmas found its blessing.
Nice.
And then this year, when I was looking, after a while, a lot of the poems for Christmas, they turn out kind of hackneyed and,
It's hard to find
fluffy.
something new.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But this year, I was looking for something, and I really didn't know what to do. And I had hung this old wreath on the door that I was going to throw away. It's been generations, but it was really beat up. But I hung it up anyway. And I looked at the wreath one day, and I said, that's it. That's the metaphor for what I've been going through the last couple of years with what was going on with the pandemic in the world and with my personal health. And it's called The Ruffled Wreath. And the thing is, every year I put it online at Christmas time on Facebook, and I get some nice responses, usually a lot of nice responses. But this year, I had an overwhelming response to this poem. People I've never reacted to it before. I don't know why, but anyway, it's called The Ruffled Wreath. It's there, adorning the door with its remnants of years, showing the ice and snow a flicker of warmth born of its aging boughs, letting its dry needles bless the firmament where they fall. a dash of dignity, never deserting their purpose, their having been part of a fullness that will never let go, no matter how far their needles scatter in the winter wind.
So you're part of the Jersey Cape Writers, or?
Yeah, well, the writers groups down here have gone through so many incarnations. We used to have little gatherings, and then one year I got this idea to start a Poetry by the Sea. It was on the platform in Wildwood Crest, a couple blocks from where I lived, and so I asked Commissioner Joyce Gould if that would be okay, and she okayed it, and I was running that for a couple years, and that was pretty cool. And
out on a pier at?
No, there's a little platform there by the gazebo in the on Rambler Road. It was like in the park.
Right.
Yeah, it's where
I've seen some music concerts there.
Yeah, Al Alberts used to do a show there too once in a while. The groups started out, I don't even know, before the wetlands. I think we were doing stuff somewhere before the wetlands, but the Wetlands Institute had groups that got together, and those groups put out a couple publications, and that was well back, going back into the 80s, early 90s, and then there was a great poetry reading up at St. Mark's Bookstore in Ocean City that I used to go to in the 80s. Then the groups at the Wetlands, over the years, they went through different incarnations and different facilitators, and eventually they wound up as the Jersey Cape Writers. And, I've been a member of them for years now, all their incarnations, and they put out a few journals.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them. We've had some people talking on here before.
Actually, a time-appropriate poem from one of their journals that I had in there. And this was a publication put out by Jersey Cape Writers. There it goes. All right. Seagrass. And that was facilitated by Lorraine Vale. And this was published in 2003. I had known Suzanne Muldaney for years. She's the parade dancer, does all the different characters in the parades. Mm-hmm. And, she's kind of withdrawn. I met her when she was dancing Dracula down at Diamond Beach in 78, I think it was. And she was in a Dracula costume on the beach. And I had to go back and ask her why she was dressed like that on the beach, So I got to know her. And I was writing for some of the papers then, so I did a press release for her, and she's a publicity hound, so she started calling me, and I started getting to know her and giving her rides to parades. And then over the years, I would really get upset the way people treated her so cruelly. One parade in the area, she was dressed in this beautiful red original Vlad the Impaler costume of before the black Bram Stoker. And she was in a parade, and she had this wooden staff she carried with her as a prop. Oh, no, a cardboard sword it was. That's what it was. And these kids and these people were attacking her with silly string and trying to ruin her beautiful costume. And so she was trying to swat them away with her cardboard sword. And the cops came. They did nothing to the kids. What they did was they took her sword away. And so she found a tree limb to use as a prop because it was important to her to have a costume, and she continued on.
How would you describe her?
Well, she has Asperger's, and but she's a very, very kind person. She sings in her church choir. She has a wonderful operatic soprano. She's a wonderful baker by commission. She used to make all these assorted Christmas trinkets for people in nursing homes and hospitals.
Mm-hmm. So you felt like she needed some tribute.
This is kind of a character study, so this is what I wrote. And every Halloween, I go see her. She dances on the beach, Spectrum the Ghost King, for a party of ghosts and she wrote a children's book about that, which was actually very good. And she tried to get it published, but it never got picked up. So she dances on the beach every Halloween night. That's kind of fun.
Just by herself?
Yep. Oh, yeah, but with the ghosts that are there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I used to have this down to perform it, and it was actually recorded with a musical backup by my friend Mike Matera years ago. And I didn't know how to get on YouTube. I always wanted to put on YouTube. Now I can't find the CD. So maybe sometime. Anyway, this is called She Dances Dracula. She dances Dracula long into the night, out on the beach where nobody sees. costume resplendent with the love of the self-sown, choreographed to celebrate the unleashed vengeance of a soul that bled too much, too soon, too often, a spirit stomped into the ground before it ever had a chance to sprout. She dances Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, true to his history, royal red, Romanian red in cape and gown, red to flash at enemies he had the courage to eviscerate in keeping his reign free from attack. She dances Dracula, red fades to black, Bram Stoker black, lurid motions of the undead coming to life, jumping off a screen, out of a book, claiming its victims silently in the night, the cruel, the unjust, the monstrous parades of snickers and sneers that must follow her wherever she goes, along her parade routes and into the insults of a sports mascot's mimicry. She dances Dracula, never more to emerge from a world of characters she's created a shield, a wall to prevent her costume sword from growing steel and piercing hearts that at first pierced hers with contempt and menace, trusted hearts that made a little girl curdle and shrink from life, afraid to be like her parents, festooned in the costumed apparatus of retreat. She dances Dracula to hang on to the one last ounce of humanity not stolen from her soul, not pried and wrenched away in the night of her lost days, her vacant cries for help that must always go unanswered, her final plea for personhood. She dances on the beach, alone, long into the night, with the party of ghosts she conjures there. And she dances all sides, all parts, and all forms of Dracula to find some speck, some redemption of justice. And she dances, watch her as she dances, for she dances the Snow Queen, an underdog, and the Irish Cinderella. She dances these and a whirl of her other characters, too. But mostly, she dances Dracula. It's the only safe way to have her revenge on a wicked world. Vlad the Impaler, oil and red. The Snow Queen, soft in white and sparkling gown. No, 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 there is no redemption here. She dances Dracula. It is always Halloween. The world for her is always a Halloween parade. Her only hope, a prize, a small trophy for her efforts, something to hold on to at the end.
Wow, she's a fighter anyway.
Yeah. And she's resurrecting her Dracula character this year for the first time in about 20, 25 years.
Is she going to be in the Halloween parade?
The Halloween parade, and Kate May she'll be Dracula again. Yeah, and
right.
she's gonna do both costumes. Evidently she's going to dress in the beautiful red costume and then take that off in front of the judges, and she'll have the Bram Stoker black underneath. And now since we're on a seasonal theme here, I don't usually write children's poems, but back in '88, when we went to a pumpkin patch, my 4-year-old niece Megan, who's now 38, and I wrote this little poem for her just for fun, and evidently it showed her something about compassion, because the next year she found this little pumpkin that was bent with a green splotch on it, and said she picked it out because if she didn't pick it out, nobody else would have. So this is called Punky Pumpkin. Punky Pumpkin lay in a pumpkin patch in a field on a faraway farm, between strawberry rows and a hill full of trees, but in sight of the big red barn. October came and the wind grew chill, and Punky Pumpkin grew orange and round, and her friends in the field started going away with the people from Halloween Town. "Oh, won't this be fun?" other pumpkins exclaimed as people chose them to bring back to town. "We'll get a funny weird face, and when our candles are lit, we'll look just like we're Halloween clowns." But as more people came and more days went by, soon Punky Pumpkin was almost alone, and she looked all around her and started to cry. "Oh, now I'll never find a nice Halloween home." But just as she wiped her last sniffle away, she looked up from her place on the ground, and a little girl named Megan was pointing to her. "Look, Mommy, Daddy, this pumpkin's so round." Punky Pumpkin went on to smile for joy as little Megan went right on to say, "Oh, this one's so cute. Can we take her home, please, to be part of our Halloween day?" Then Megan's daddy stooped down and picked Punky up and held her to shine in the sun. "Yes, this looks like a good jack-o'-lantern," he said, and Punky knew that her long wait was done. Then a wheelbarrow ride back down to the barn and a hayride back down to the car. And as Punky Pumpkin beamed in little Megan's arms, she knew Halloween couldn't be far.
Yay.
Probably my only children's poem. I don't think I ever wrote any more. I wrote some songs for the kids, but see what else. Now, as you mentioned, I have had a lot of poetry appear in publications, and I had a chapbook. The chapbook I had was with a very fine poet and editor and publisher, John Ellsberg. And he invited me after I had published poems in his literary magazine, Bog, over the few years.
Mhm.
And this is a English language journal published internationally in England, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. So that it was pretty cool to have my work in there
Nice.
and have that kind of an audience. So it was an honor when he asked me to do this joint chapbook with him. And he had lived in a house with his father at the Avalon Boulevard, the Jersey Shore years ago. He was based in Washington, D.C. now, and unfortunately he passed in 2012, unexpectedly at 66. So we did this joint chapbook together, and we actually did it by email. And he did the editing and all that, and it was an honor to be in there with him. Yeah, it's a poem called Diner Music. It was inspired by Big Ernie's Diner in Wildwood. Then after it appeared in Bog, it appeared in this fine literary journal in California called Spillway. And then it also appeared in a journal out of New Jersey called Maelstrom that accepted previously published publications. So this poem was submitted 3 times and accepted 3 times. I retired it because I always say I have a poem that was never rejected, which is like phenomenal. That doesn't happen. So anyway, it's called Diner Music. When I was working in Atlantic City, at that time, if you missed the buses were like 3 hours in between or something like that, the shuttle. So you were out of work for the day. And I did, and so I sauntered over to Ernie's Diner to have some breakfast and solve my frustration. And I realized this diner was a diner that I used to stop into my folks on vacation. It was a diner we used to go to during the party days, the 70s, and Wildwood on the Strip, and go and hang out there all night after the clubs, So all these elements went into it, and it's called Diner Music. Elvis Over Easy. A breakfast duke thrusts a morning prayer of former Americas through the shadows of a diner's memory-dripped ambiance, taking a toasty smile away from its ketchup and eggs, and bringing a dream of safety out from the eyes of youthful excursions that never missed a chance to drop a quarter for a song when a home fry was on the plate, or a chance to turn a late-night stop into another side of morning.
Just a short and sweet one.
Just like to mention some other.
I saw you perform one time at some group thing. You read something that you were out under the stars listening to jazz music on the radio.
Oh, yeah, that was the Static Jazz and the Nebulous Nebulae poem. And that poem placed first in the last big poetry slam at Cape May Stage. I won that.
Do you have that by heart, or do you have it?
I used to. I don't.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, a lot of my manuscripts, my writings got locked away in storage when I was forced to move in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
My door got locked because my old rock collection fell against it. So this May, finally, a friend of mine pried the door open, but I haven't had a chance to get in there to dig them out yet.
Well, maybe we'll have to have a second interview, and you can get some of those dug out from your storage unit.
I know the intro to it. Does the moon miss the music? It was meant to eclipse. Can a galaxy of sound drown out best music from its rightful ears? Rat-a-tat-tat went to nebulous nebulae, piercing the sky with all that static jazz. I don't know. Anyway,
well, we'll have it in full later date. So.
But here's one that I would like to include because this was a special poem to me. It's called The Rugged Boats, about the commercial fishing boats down here. It's actually placed first in a poetry contest for the Bay Days contest up at Port Norris back in 2007. And they made me this nice plaque. When I did it at a Cape May songwriters get-together, my friend Jane Sparrow, who lived at a Cape May Point, who's a very fine classical composer, and she wrote this beautiful operetta called Gift of the Magi that was performed down here several times, and other works. And so she put it to music, and we worked on it for a while. We were going to record it, but we never got around to doing it now. And anyway, it's called The Rugged Boats. Apart from the sparkling nonchalance, the good time fragility, the sometimes seaman antics of the season's leisure fleet, apart from this, and at all times of year, in all worlds of weather, friend or foe, working vessels, trawlers, clammers, scallopers, slip from the short security of docks aged with an ancient nautical character, that mysterious reverence that comes when generations of a life and labor rapport with the sea are born in the blood, and slosh their way through the solemn dignity of their accepted ritual, through the riptides of the inlets, to the swells and greedily thrashing waves, as playful or wicked as the moment's whims of the winds, and pick their way toward their lonely pastures, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for the mere strain of a day, sometimes forever. And so raw, robust creatures of spindly grandeur stalk the watery horizon, creep near the beach, hang dim earthbound stars on the lips of the nautical night, pluck a living from the guts of the sea, then strut their rusted nets and rigging and venture back to land. Holds filled to the briny brims with scallops or clams or fish, and other such luckless swimmers of the deep, all future fare and fisherman's bait. Ah, yes, meals to be consumed in pristine etiquette on the pretty white tablecloth of some sin-fancy restaurant. But many a rough, calloused hand knows of the work, the daily struggle with the sea that brought the dinner there, and many a stout man laid waste by the sea would laugh at this petty ritual of dining on the harvest of his brutal labor with such fragile manners, with such innocent shenanigans.
And that adds a tribute to the commercial fishing.
Yep. Of course, I'm a songwriter, and I recently recorded a CD that was released a few months right before the shutdown, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I was asked by Gordon Vincent, a very fine musician and producer in the area, to come and record this at his studio, and he did a fine job with it. It's just a compendium of my original songs, like a legacy. It's all about the songwriting, just me and my guitar, very basic. Gordon laid down backup lead guitar to it. He didn't want to take credit for it, but he's there. So thanks, Gordon.
We need to play some of that.
It's yours.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
We'll put some on the beginning and end of this, maybe. Thank you to David Check, and maybe we'll have him again sometime when we can dig out the poems that are in the storage unit.
Could I just do a real short, humorous one?
Oh, you may.
It was actually published in the Plastic Tower. It's just called Cheerios. You know, always leave them laughing.
Okay.
There are holes in my breakfast. There are holes in my heart. Everywhere I go, I see holes. I think the world must have one big hole in it. Perhaps God is a Dunkin' Donut, and we are all just lost little Cheerios.
And that's that. Thank you, David Check.
Thank you, Barbara.
See you again.
Singing in the kitchen, thinking about my life. Singing in the kitchen till the forks and knives. Singing in the kitchen, my favorite scene. It's just me and my dreams. It's just me